On today's show, Cam Whitmore's potentially concerning post-game comments to the media. Plus, we get into our Houston Rockets New Year's resolutions, offensive execution, Tari Eason's overall health, and so much more. It's all coming up on today's Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Drop us a comment while you're there. We want your thoughts on Cam Whitmore's post-game media availability, where it was an interesting post-game media availability, as well as your Houston Rockets New Year's resolutions. Let us know all your thoughts in the YouTube comments. Also, subscribe to our daily Locked On Rockets newsletter. Would sincerely appreciate that. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being an everydayer. Joining us now is your weekly co-host, none other than the podfather himself, Rockets Wire editor and host of the Logger Line podcast, Ben DuBose. You can track down on Twitter at Ben DuBose. Here's where we're going to go over some of our Houston Rockets New Year's resolutions. But before we can do that, we've got to dive into the somewhat concerning post-game comments from Cam Whitmore. We thought we were going into the new year with great vibes, a good win against the Dallas Mavericks, and then Cam Whitmore's post-game had, other ideas here. Let's dive straight into what Cam Whitmore had to say after this recent Rockets win.
Cam, how did it feel just to get consistent minutes there in that second quarter, but also in that fourth quarter to close the game?
I don't think it was consistent minutes. I really don't know or think that. I contribute a little bit, but it doesn't really affect anything. It doesn't really can't get me nowhere. But we'll see what happens. But just glad we got the win.
You don't feel good about how you played tonight?
I do, but it's nothing. It doesn't mean anything.
Is it kind of just a weird spot with where you're at right now?
No, not a weird spot. I just don't know. What's going on. So I have a lot of question marks for myself.
In what way?
No other way. It's just I don't know what's going on. I don't know what the deal with me is, but I just don't know.
Did you feel like coming in the second quarter that you need to provide that spark, with the team trailing by 10 points?
That's my goal. Every time I step on the floor with these guys, just to bring energy, spark, joy, just some juice to help these guys win.
What was your mindset on defense, especially the whole team seemed really locked in on that end tonight?
I feel like we had to defend. That's like they're coming off Eastern Conference. Western Conference Finals. So they're a very good team. We got Kyrie and Klay Thompson. So definitely have to dial in a little bit more. It's not just any team we're playing.
Do you think that you've done enough to show that you deserve a consistent role and consistent minutes in this game?
No, don't. No.
What more do you think you need to do?
Sure, I don't know. I really don't know. I have a lot of question marks for myself, just as you guys too. But I have no idea. I don't know what other things I can do.
Okay, Ben. That post-game interview was something else. Look, after one of easily the best games, most impactful games of Cam Whitmore's career, young career, mind you, and just to dive into that post-game interview, I feel like there's maybe a couple different ways that this can be read, but it doesn't really sound good when you start to try and dissect why he's saying, I don't know, about his role and about expectations moving forward and have you done enough to be in the red. It does not look good.
And it's not completely out of left field. There have been a couple of other interviews. I remember one from Shoot Around recently where someone asked him a question along the same lines, basically, have you shown enough, or what do you need to show to get consistent minutes? And he says something along the same lines, which is, I thought I did that already. And you can sense some frustration there. I think what was really different about this game was that it came at home versus a good opponent. I'm sure some people are asking, well, why didn't he do this after he played well against the Pelicans or against the Raptors? The thing is, those were road games where you have maybe a couple of reporters at most, and those are against terrible opponents as well. So it would be silly to sort of victory lap, as opposed to at home when you've got 10, 12 reporters around you, there's a whole scrum, and you were probably the swing variable in a big win against a good Dallas team, the closest team to you in the Western Conference standings when it comes to earning a top 3 spot. I think this was much more of a victory lap, if you will, in Cam's mind, saying, this is what I could have been doing all along. I think there's clear frustration. He's hinted at it at times. Last night, for nearly 2 minutes, was the closest I've seen to him sort of sticking with it for a sustained period. And so it's definitely awkward. However, when you think a little bit more, I don't see it as a huge reason for concern, because underneath it all, these are human beings. Even if he didn't act that way in a post-game interview, I think it's only natural for a guy who is extremely talented, and with that type of talent typically comes confidence. At 19 years old, he was a good player for a competent Rockets team last year, and all of a sudden he's sent back to the G League. Of course that's hard. It's going to be hard for anyone that believes in themselves. And so I don't see it as a huge reason for concern just this one time. Now, if it continues to be, every conversation with him for months on end carries the same level of residual frustration, bitterness, however you want to characterize it, then yeah, that could be concerning for team morale, the clubhouse, all those types of factors. But the way I'm choosing to look at it is that this was probably him blowing off some steam, and hopefully, with Tari's situation uncertain moving forward, and even if Tari Eason does come back healthy, you can just give minutes that were going to reach Shepard and Aaron Holiday to Cam Whitmore. My hope is that now there's a clear path to rotation minutes for Cam. He's proven worthy of those, and if he gets it, then we all just sort of look back and laugh at this a few months from now.
Yeah, very much. And to add to your point, right, about the frustrations, on top of that, right, a guy who is as talented as Cam, who did have an impact on last year's team, getting kind of that demotion, right, being sent to the G League, and then at the same time seeing guys that were getting consistent minutes ahead of him in Fred, in Jalen, in Reed Shepard, guys who were struggling to produce on a consistent basis, right? I'm sure in Cam's mind, he's thinking, why in the hell is Reed Shepard getting a rotation spot ahead of me? And now Reed Shepard has been, moved on from the Rockets rotation. At least it appears that way, with Aaron Holiday kind of moving ahead of him now in the pecking order. So, it's one of those things where I'm sure there's like a bunch of variables, a lot of kind of compounding issues here. And look, we've seen players who crash out in way worse ways than this, right? This was basically Cam just, instead of choosing to name drop or call out Ime by name or saying anything about the way that other players on the team were playing, he just basically said a lot of I don't know, I have questions, whatever. And it really wasn't that bad in the grand scheme of things. I absolutely agree with you there. And again, to his point, to his credit, if he continues to play like this, there's zero reason why he shouldn't be a consistent part of the rotation moving forward. What Cam provides, his downhill scoring presence, his elite play finishing ability, these are all skills that this Houston Rockets team has desperately been missing this season, especially that scoring punch off the bench. We've seen what they can do when Ime Thompson and Tari Eason check into a game and they are able to dominate defensively and kind of ignite the offense using their defense. But neither of Ime or Tari can play the way that Cam Whitmore can on the offensive side of the floor. The big hang up with Cam has been his defense, right? Can he be locked in enough defensively to be at the level that Ime Udoka expects him to be at? And it seems like he's really, the demotion, if you will, to the G League was maybe a little bit of a wake-up call to him, however frustrating it was for him to realize, hey, okay, if I want to play, I've got to take the defensive side seriously, and he has since he returned.
And it feels like Ime Udoka is aware of these frustrations, because if you noticed in Ime's post-game interview last night, Ime went out of his way not just to compliment Cam for his scoring, but also for that defense. And if you noticed, he made Cam a part of the closing lineup in place of Jabari Smith Jr. last night. So I think we're seeing the Rockets acknowledge that this is hard on Cam. And so there's a little bit of good cop, bad cop. There's definitely been a lot of bad cop early in the season. So now that, he's proven worthy of the minutes, and also there's a clear need, there's a clear deficiency in this team when it comes to, shot making and scoring, then now we're seeing them, start to build back that ego a little bit and sort of stroke it and tell him, look, man, we believe in you. We're going to need you. And so I think the Rockets are aware that this is a delicate situation. And so you can see in Ime's comments that he's trying to sort of dial it back a little bit. And hopefully that finds the right balance moving forward, because you're exactly right. They need Cam Whitmore the way this team is currently constructed. I think during the offseason and the preseason and summer league, they thought that Reed Shepard might be a little bit of a better fit. But when the games got real, it became very clear that Cam was more ready to contribute this season to high-level NBA basketball, especially when the threes finally started falling. We know he was cold to start the year. That was not going to be sustainable. And now that he's come back shooting threes competently, then the rest of his game falls in line. And look, this is a team, we know the runs they gave up against the Timberwolves and the Heat, 17-2, 15-2 late in those games. Cam Whitmore's a guy, he has flaws, he needs to make quicker decisions, he needs to defend better, but he can get buckets in his sleep. And this is a team that needs somebody to go get buckets. And so, Reed isn't as ready as the Rockets thought. And I also think it's sort of correlated with the rest of the roster as well. Look, Jalen Green has not consistently taken the leap that a lot of Rockets fans wanted him to going into this season. Fred VanVleet has regressed. So because of that, there's even more of a need for scoring, for shot making, for creation. And so you combine all of those things together. Reed not being as ready as you thought. Fred taking a step back. Jalen still being inconsistent. All of that leads to needing someone, even if he's flawed, even if he's a little raw at just 20 years old, someone that can go out and get buckets. That's what Cam Whitmore does. And for a team that is elite defensively already, but needs a little bit more scoring punch, it's a no-brainer. He needs to be in the rotation moving forward, and I think he will be.
Coming up, we're going to get into our Rockets New Year's resolutions now that we can bury the Cam Whitmore drama or lack thereof, and a little bit of drama.
That's one of the resolutions, play Cam Whitmore.
There we go, right? We're teeing it off with that. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Look, going to live events is the absolute best. I love it. Whether it's sports, music, theater, comedy, attending live events is awesome. It's so much fun. Went to a concert last year and it was an unforgettable experience. And I got the tickets on Game Time. Look, Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. The feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats. So you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of different tickets. Just like earlier this week, I was looking for tickets a little bit later this month to go to a Rockets game with some friends. And using the Game Time app, it makes it so seamless. With Game Time Picks, you can find amazing deals where you can even see the view from your seat so you know exactly what to expect. The super deal is really impressive, offering great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, you have an all-in pricing feature that shows you the total cost up front. They're fully transparent. They don't hit you with any surprise fees at checkout, none of that stuff. So take the guesswork out of buying your tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, well, spoiler alert there. That was one of our resolutions, was just give Cam Whitmore more minutes. Ben, do you want to add anything on top of that resolution, or do you think we kind of already have addressed that with spending the whole first segment talking about Cam?
I think we already addressed it. It's pretty clear what he brings to this team that they don't have without him.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to our next one. I'll throw one up here. I want to talk about the Houston Rockets. They need to resolve their offensive execution, in particular, their crunch time offensive execution. And I think this is kind of a really unfortunate side effect, right? We had recently, right, a few weeks back or whatever, Dylan Brooks had that really awesome quote, right? Sometimes you, sometimes me, always us. And that's a great quote. Even Rockets socials were running with it. It was awesome. And it's a great like vibes kind of mentality, whatever. Yeah, we're a team. We do everything together. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, in crunch time, that is a horrible way to run a basketball team, because when you've got, Fred taking one or two shots and then Dylan taking one or two shots and Jalen taking one or two and Alperen taking one or two, like I find it really difficult and frustrating for this Rockets team. They don't have really a go-to guy or even a go-to set, it feels like, down the stretch of these close games. And that's why we've seen the games against the Wolves, against the Heat, where they bottom out and they cannot find any semblance of offense down the stretch. Part of that is because it's compounded by the issue that they're just not a good shooting team to begin with. But when you don't have, I guess, a go-to guy, or when you don't have a way to get to your go-to guy, your best player in Alperen and Sengun consistently down the stretch, it leads to massive problems in trying to close out some of these games.
And it also brings back the question of rhythm, which we've brought up so many times in the past, which is that when you're spreading the wealth to where it's your turn, my turn, somebody gets a possession, and then if it doesn't go well, the next two are going to go elsewhere, then no one is getting in rhythm, and they're constantly in a state of uncertainty as to where or if they're going to get touches. And so it makes it very difficult to get any level of consistency. I'll raise the point you just made and take it to another level, which is that I think in 2025, this is the year the Rockets have to get a 1A. And it doesn't have to come by the trade market. It can come, it's unlikely. But look, the second half of this season, if Jalen Green or Cam Whitmore, someone on the perimeter takes a leap consistently, not talking about just a hot month for Jalen Green, but if he can do it consistently over the back half of the year, if Cam Whitmore can build on what he's shown lately, then it's possible they could develop that 1A internally. But if not, look, this is the year I think that you've got to make it happen either internally or externally, because I think you're at a perfect point now entering 2025 where you have both incentive and opportunity. Incentive, look, the team, even with these flaws, is 22-11 and number 3 in the West. This is a good team. Opportunity is not a lengthy visitor in the NBA. The new CBA, injuries, things can happen. If you are this good as is, it doesn't take a lot to actually get to the legitimate contention tier. So if you can upgrade your team through a trade for Devin Booker or De'Aaron Fox or whoever it may be, then you owe it to yourself to explore that opportunity, because again, you can't assume that for 5, 10 plus years, you're going to be a consistent contender. If you are this good consistently as is, and there's an opportunity to address this deficiency, you should take it. The other part of the equation is opportunity. And you've got at least 2 guys that I think maybe it's not at the trade deadline, maybe it takes until the offseason, but 2 guys who can reasonably be on the market in Fox and Booker that address your biggest deficiency, which is perimeter shot creation and scoring, that should be available to you at a relatively reasonable cost. Fox, because he has the direct ties to Houston as a Houston native. I feel strongly that he would want to be here. And Booker, because of course you have those future Phoenix picks. So you're in an advantaged negotiating position if the Suns choose to blow it up. And maybe there's opportunities beyond just De'Aaron Fox and Devin Booker. Those are just 2 names that are at the forefront of discussions right now. But the point is, you're at a spot where the team is good enough, and there are going to be opportunities there. The strength of the Western Conference, the Kings, the Suns, both several games below 500 at present. If you don't develop it internally in 2025, that 1A, then you're at a point where if you just kick the can down the road and say, well, we'll see what happens in 2026, 2027, there is a cost in waiting. So I'll take your point and raise it. This is the year they need to get a 1A. It might not happen the next month. It might take until the offseason, but this is the year that I think they've got to get it done, because if you don't, then you're wasting what could be an open window already.
I'll be completely honest, looking at this Rockets roster as presently constructed, all the talent on the roster, the only guy that I see that is potentially down the line going to have the skill set required to truly be a 1A guy is actually, you see Cam Whitmore has the upside, crazy scoring potential, all that. I don't know if he's ever going to be the kind of guy that you want being your lead guard, primary ball handler right now. To me, a 1A has to be somebody that you are confident in steering the offense, right, for stretches of a game. He doesn't have to be a point guard. He doesn't have to be Jokic running the offense, whatever, but it needs to be a player that you are confident in taking care of the basketball, making the right decisions, scoring for not only himself, but also getting teammates involved, elevating the entire play of the team. I don't know if that's going to be Cam Whitmore down the line. He's an elite play finisher right now, and that's already great for his skill set. I think Ime Thompson is probably the guy that you look at clearly with the skill set, the playmaking ability, the size, the downhill gravity. The shooting needs to continue to grow, but he's gotten better at that this year. I just don't know if they have one on this roster. And to your point about needing to go get one, yes, it maybe doesn't happen at this trade deadline, although things are, getting very topsy-turvy, chaotic with the Sacramento Kings, and it seems like that situation is just, a crazy powder keg ready to situation's crazy. It can't be fixed. I've seen a lot of debate kind of, amongst Rockets fans been about, the merits of Fox versus Booker versus holding out for even, even a star better than either of those 2 guys, which
Giannis.
I don't agree with the idea of like sitting on your hands and waiting for the quote unquote perfect star to arrive. I think you've got to make a move, especially if one is available to you, and try to capitalize, like you said, on the success that this team is having right now. Which way do you currently lean between the 2 most of potentially available guys in Fox and Booker? Do you have a preference between the 2 at this point?
For me, it's still Booker. I think it's an easier sort of drop-in replacement to the formula. And I also think the Rockets have some undersized guards in Fred. Now, there's possibility that Fred might go in one of these deals. You also have Reed Shepard potentially, although he could be in these trade talks as well. But the point is, if you have De'Aaron Fox, it makes it a little bit difficult to sort of sustain the defensive formula that you have now if you're also going to be playing or needing to play someone like Fred VanVleet or Reed Shepard extended minutes. Whereas with Devin Booker, if you dropped him into the current version of the Rockets, you have much more optionality in bringing or building the rest of the rotation around him simply because of that size, as opposed to De'Aaron Fox, who's relatively small, definitely light. You want to be able to address the scoring, the playmaking deficiency without taking away from the foundation of what makes this team very good already, which is its elite defense. And so with Booker being a little bit bigger, I think it's easier for him to sort of plug him into the current formula without needing to make other changes. It's not that, I would turn down De'Aaron Fox. No, you just need a little bit more work to make it fit with all the pieces you have right now.
The way that I come away from it thinking is, if the Rockets went for either of those two guys, I envision Ime Thompson as one of the starting guards for this team, potentially as early as next. I mean, he could be starting this season, right? If the Rockets didn't have, starters who kind of have carved out their spots ahead of Ime Thompson, there's a world where Ime Thompson he's already a starting level player in the NBA. He's just buried on the bench right now because the Rockets have, the starters that are currently placed in front of him. So whether it's De'Aaron Fox and Ime Thompson, a backcourt of those two guys, or a backcourt of Devin Booker and Ime Thompson, I look at it from that standpoint. And then the other three guys being, Dylan Brooks, Jabari, Sengun, the front court kind of stays the same. And from that perspective, I think it would be contingent for me on how Ime continues to grow as a potential primary ball handler and facilitator, because we already saw 1 year of Devin Booker as the point guard for the Phoenix Suns, and it wasn't great. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great with him handling the rock full time. I don't think that's Devin Booker's forte. He needs a table setter alongside him to be at the best version of himself. That's why the Suns went out and got Tyus Jones this past offseason, and it's really helped Devin Booker a lot this year, having a true table-setting point guard to play alongside rather than having defenses, him having to, set everything up for himself, for KD, for Beal, all that stuff. So I think in that regard, Fox is more acclimated to that role of having the ball in his hands full-time, being the point guard on the floor, and Ime Thompson can continue to be that pseudo-wing off guard next to De'Aaron, whereas with Devin Booker, Ime would need to be more ready to take on that mantle of maybe not the full-time initiator, but he would need to have a level of playmaking reps next to Devin Booker to make it work.
Although I will say, and this ties back into our earlier Cam Whitmore discussion, I think Cam's emergence and the need to play him even when the Rockets get back to full strength, knock on wood, hopefully we see Tari Eason back soon, is going to force Ime into some more on-ball reps in the second half of this season. Because, look, the delta between Cam Whitmore and Reed Shepard is so large at this point, you can't just play Reed because he's an easier fit for what you need. Cam is just a much more ready NBA player right now. And Aaron Holiday is a solid player, but he just doesn't have the upside that Cam Whitmore does. So because of that, you're not really going to have a true backup point guard. You're going to need to give those minutes that were either going to Reed Shepard or Aaron Holiday to Cam Whitmore. And so because of that, you're going to need someone else to do the initiating, because as you mentioned, Cam's more of the play finisher, especially at this stage of his career. So some of it's going to be Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green, who Ime is staggering already as sort of the lead guards, but also you're going to need more backup point guard responsibilities to be taken on from Ime Thompson in this configuration where you aren't running, in my opinion, Reed Shepard or Aaron Holiday. You're giving those minutes to Cam Whitmore instead because he's earned them. Well, Ime can't help but handle the ball a little bit more given those dynamics. And so because of that, it's going to be a little bit of sort of a useful case study for how much Ime can take on at this stage of his career and whether he's capable of doing even more should a Booker deal present itself in the offseason.
Coming up, we're going to get to the rest of our Houston Rockets New Year's resolution. Spoiler alert, can we get a healthy Tari Eason, please? We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many different ways for you to pick up a dub. You can bet on which players will score a touchdown first, or how many points each team will ultimately score. And there's so many different, like when you head on over to FanDuel.com, you can take a look at so many different ways to wager this season. Check out their parlay builder, check out the different season awards specials. There's still time to get in on those before the regular season ends, or the outright favorites to win the Super Bowl. Right now, the Chiefs plus 360, the Lions plus 470, the Bills plus 600, right behind them, the Ravens plus 650, and rounding out the top five, the Eagles plus 700. So for all those odds and so much more, go to FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. We're going to get to our final Rockets New Year's resolutions here. We're going to start with, I got to lob this one up. Tari, Eason, Ben, my goodness, this has been, it went from injury maintenance. This is getting to like almost Astros levels of like discomfort. Right? It's the new thing, you know, injury maintenance and pain tolerance. Now you're hearing Ime use words like pain tolerance, and he's, you know, testing it out before game. This situation is not good. Like at first it was kind of like, I remember like 3 games in, I was telling fans, I was like, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. Then we hit 5 games, 6 games, and I was like, okay, it's not quite like a 5-alarm fire, but this is really concerning for a guy that literally just had surgery on this exact same leg last year. This is not a great look, unfortunately, and I really do hope that it's nothing, but a healthy Tari, like we need a healthy Tari for this team.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with Ime Thompson out suspended in a stretch of the schedule that's pretty difficult, even though you are at home. Look, I think the one mistake the Rockets made in this, they should have listed it initially as lower leg soreness as opposed to injury management. I said back when he missed his second game, you know, you could have convinced me the first time coming off the NBA Cup that maybe they're just trying to strategically give him a week plus off, and that's why they're calling it injury management. No, as soon as Ime confirmed that there was soreness, to me, that's not injury management. Injury management is strategic. That's planned. That's saying we know there's this issue, and so we're going to, you know, look for spots in the schedule that we can give him some rest. No, this was unplanned. This was soreness that they did not necessarily expect that showed up nonetheless. And now they're trying to, you know, get that soreness out before letting him back on the court in a real high stress NBA game. And so, you know, I think soreness rather than injury management would have been good to sort of, you know, put fan expectations in a better place going into these last 3 weeks. I think that's contributed to the frustration. With that said, I think Ime Udoka, if you listen to the interviews that he's given, has actually been fairly forthcoming in terms of how Tari is feeling, what they need to see to feel comfortable in putting him back on the floor. I think if anything, this is a situation, and it, you know, I love your Astros comparison. It reminds me a little bit of Kyle Tucker with his shin issues this past season. And next thing you know, a month or two down the line, oh, by the way, there was a fracture. And, you know, some of this, or a lot of this, in my opinion, comes down to the fact that the coach or the manager, Ime Udoka, Joe Espada, is not necessarily the best person to be asking or to be answering a lot of these questions, because it's more medical. It could be the player, although I understand why the leagues don't make the players available while they're recovering from injuries. Ideally,
no. Jason Biles' press conference, win. I want it now.
Well, it honestly, on rare occasions, is warranted, and it would help, you know, provide a much more clear picture of what's going on. Because I think the $64,000 question here is whether this soreness is normal and to be expected. Is that a joke?
I don't get it. $64,000 question?
Yeah, that goes back to Who Wants to Be a Millionaire back in the day.
Oh my goodness.
$64,000 was one of the big like cutoff points.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, I just aged myself embarrassingly. So there. All right. Anyways, go ahead.
Different generations. Anyway, the big question is whether this soreness is normal for a guy that had this surgery on his leg 9 months ago, and thus, you know, nothing all that alarming, or if it's unusual. And if it's unusual, then obviously the question has to be raised, did the surgery actually fix the issue, or is there still something structurally wrong in that bone? I don't know the answer to that, and I'm not sure Ime Udoka fully knows either. I think, you know, Tari knows, but especially the medical team treating him, They know that. And to me, that's the big question. How much of this is just simply to be expected? Look, it's not a nothing burger, the surgery, and we're not even to a year mark since the surgery. You hear all the time. We've seen it with Steven Adams. A lot of these major injuries in the NBA, especially to, lower body parts, are sort of multi-year recovery processes. So how much of this is normal versus how much of this is alarming? I'm not sure Ime Udoka fully knows, yet he's the only one that's available. So he's getting asked these questions, and I don't think he, fully knows what the answers are. I think in a perfect world, and this is not a Rocket specific problem, we see this all around the league, but you would have more, you're not going to have a Jason Biles press conference every single week. Let's not get crazy. But in situations of high uncertainty involving major roster situations, it can be helpful to get that perspective, because in some respects, Ime is being put out there on an island, and I don't think he necessarily knows what to say. He's, basically saying all he can at this point. And I think as far as his comments,
he's basically parroting the information that he's being given from the medical staff, right? When he checks in with them, hey, is Tari ready? Hey, is the game
and
time
that's what
decision?
contributes to some of the frustration from the fan base is they want to know more, but we can't really ask that to Ime because I don't think he knows. It's not, he's not a medical expert. He doesn't know the particulars and what's normal coming off this particular surgery and what's not. So to me, I'm hoping for the best. It does seem possible that, just 9 months since the surgery, that perhaps this is normal, but there's also a world where it's not normal. I don't know the answer to that. But the bottom line is this uncertainty is frustrating. I get why fans, especially with the team initially listing it as injury management, are frustrated. I will say the one thing that has me leaning more positive than negative is the fact that Tari Eason is out on the court. He is working at practices. He's doing his pregame workouts. They say the pain is subsiding. Obviously, it's not all the way gone or he would be playing. But this is not a situation like last year where prior to the surgery, he had been shut down for weeks and he was basically doing nothing. No, he's out there. He is competing. And I think the medical staff, even if we're not talking to them, they know enough to where they would not be putting him out there and even letting him do pregame workouts at the stress that he's going through at the moment if they were gravely concerned that this is what he was dealing with pretty much 1 year ago. This is not a shutdown to that level. So because of that, I tend to think that this is more just standard post-op soreness and nothing to be too alarmed by. However, it would be nice to actually know from someone that has, more medical background than Dr. Ime Udoka.
And besides all the Twitter doctors trying to, run up their numbers. All right, Ben, what's your next resolution you got for this team?
Boy, that's a tough one. I'll say give Reed Shepard some G League reps, and that ties in with our Cam Whitmore discussion earlier. But if Reed's not going to play, I don't understand what benefit he has at the end of your bench, because it seems like the guy that gets turned to in a pinch is Aaron Holiday. If you run into some foul trouble or injuries in the game, or you just need a spark, the consistency of Aaron Holiday seems to be Ime Udoka's security blanket. Some will undoubtedly ask, why wasn't Cam Whitmore inserted into the rotation a month earlier? Because it was clear around late November, early December that Reed was really struggling with the physicality and the speed of the NBA game. And the answer to that, in my opinion, is with the NBA Cup and with a very tough scheduling stretch, they didn't want to make such a drastic change at that time. It was easier to just turn to Aaron Holiday as a drop-in replacement and turn back to Cam potentially after the NBA Cup when the schedule lightened up towards the end of the month and you also had more home games. And so stylistically, you could sort of change some things. So we've seen several times this year already, Aaron Holiday is that security blanket. And I don't think either of Aaron Holiday or Reed Shepard is going to be in your rotation to begin with once Tari Eason comes back, because Cam Whitmore, in my opinion, has earned his spot. So what is Reed Shepard really doing at the 12 or 13 spot on your bench? To me, this team needs to get him reps. He needs to improve. I guess the overall resolution is help Reed Shepard get better. And I just don't think that's going to happen at the end of the bench not playing in Houston.
All right, I'm going to throw one in here, and it's one we've talked about ad nauseum throughout this whole season, but can we get Alperen Sengun to be able to finish shots around the rim consistently again. His rim field goal percentage is trending up, but it's not anywhere near what it needs to be and what it was in previous seasons. And again, you go look at his numbers from this year. If his shooting in and around the basket was what it was even just last season, he'd be arguably potentially in the MVP conversation, because his number, he'd be, somewhere around 24, 25 points a game instead of hovering around, 18, 19, because he's just missing so many bunnies around the rim. It's ridiculous. Yeah,
absolutely. And that ties back into the rhythm conversation that we've had so many times throughout this episode and really throughout this season, which is when you have this, together formula, it sounds great. But at the end of the day, especially in high leverage moments, you often need continual reps to get that touch, to feel confident in knowing how you need to finish around tough defenders. Like last night, I thought Sengun finally got it going late in the game against Derek Lively. That's not a guy that you see that many replicas of around the NBA. So it takes some reps, it takes some consistency to get a feel for what you need to do. And so that's where I think having a more established hierarchy, especially in high leverage moments, could really benefit the Rockets. It's not to give Alperen Sengun a pass. I'm just saying that's one of many reasons for it, is I think they're trying to spread the wealth so much that the lack of rhythm makes it difficult for him to finish at the level that I think he should be capable of.
I've got like 2 or 3 more like rapid fire ones that I can get to, unless you've got you. Okay, then I'll say Jalen Green consistency, because that's an easy one to pinpoint.
That's been a resolution for like 3 years counting, man.
I know it's unfortunate, but maybe this will be the year that it finally sticks. Look, if anything, he's consistently consistent with the need for this resolution. We need Fred VanVleet to get his shooting stroke back, although that can be applied to the whole team. Like, just can the whole team, you know what, New Year's resolution, Ben Sullivan, change your shooting technique, change whatever your shooting guru stuff is with the Rockets roster, because the whole team is struggling to shoot the basketball. And that is a potentially direct indictment of the guy that was not necessarily brought in to be the shooting coach, but what happened, man? What happened to the Ben Sullivan that helped Derek White become a knockdown 3-point shooter, right? Like, where's that Ben Sullivan?
Where's laser eyes Ben Sullivan?
There we go. We need some laser eyes Ben Sullivan. And the last one that I have written down here is, I would love for I'm sure that the NBA, referees, the officials have like a great healthcare plan and benefits. I don't know if they have optical benefits or whatever, but it would be great if we could go around the entire league and make sure that every single official is given a pair of glasses, courtesy of the Houston Rockets and Ime Udoka.
Get some glasses, open your eyes.
That's my final New Year's resolution. You got any more, Ben, before we close this one down?
No, I think we pretty much hit them all. Don't forget our good friends at LASIK on Twitter that are relentlessly offering free surgery to refs who need it. We definitely had some earlier this week.
Oh my goodness. On that note, happy New Year to you and your families. We want to know your Houston Rockets New Year's resolutions. Let us know in the YouTube comments. Ben, let everyone know where they can track you down at.
Yep. Ben DuBose, the Logger Line, the Rockets Wire on Twitter, and rocketswire.usatoday.com for all your daily Houston Rockets news coverage.
That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Rockets. As always, thanks so much for checking out the show. Remember, the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform of your choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Drop a comment while you're there. Subscribe to our daily Locked On Rockets newsletter. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.